Climate Change, Mitigation, and Adaptation. Part 1. Understanding Climate Change. Introduction. Climate change represents one of the most significant challenges facing humanity in the 21st century. It is a global phenomenon with local implications, affecting weather patterns, ecosystems, human health, and economies. As the scientific consensus around climate change strengthens, the urgency to both reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the inevitable changes becomes more apparent. This course explores two complementary strategies in the fight against climate change: mitigation, efforts to reduce or prevent the emission of greenhouse gases, and adaptation, initiatives aimed at adjusting to actual or expected climate impacts. The science of climate change. At its core, climate change refers to long-term alterations in temperature, precipitation, wind patterns, and other aspects of the Earth's climate system. While the climate has changed throughout Earth's history, the current trend is largely driven by human activities, particularly the burning of fossil fuels. Key scientific indicators of climate change include rising global temperatures, melting polar ice and glaciers, sea level rise, increased frequency and intensity of extreme weather events. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, plays a central role in assessing scientific information related to climate change, providing critical data to inform policy and action. Causes of climate change. The primary cause of modern climate change is the accumulation of greenhouse gases, GHGs, in the atmosphere. These gases trap heat, leading to a warming effect known as the greenhouse effect. Major sources of GHG emissions include carbon dioxide from fossil fuel combustion, deforestation, and industrial processes. Methane, carbon tetrahydride, from agriculture, landfills, and energy production. Nitrous oxide, dinitrogen monoxide, from fertilizers and industrial activities. Fluorinated gases from refrigerants and industrial applications. Global impacts of climate change. Climate change impacts every region differently, but key global effects include disruption of agricultural systems and food security, water scarcity and resource conflicts, loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services, human health risks from heat waves, disease, and displacement, economic losses and increased inequality. Vulnerable populations, particularly in developing countries, are disproportionately affected due to limited resources and infrastructure. The need for action. Addressing climate change requires immediate and sustained global action. Mitigation and adaptation are not mutually exclusive, but must be pursued together for a resilient and sustainable future. Effective policies, technological innovation, financial investment, and community engagement are all essential components of a comprehensive climate strategy. Part 2. Climate Change Mitigation Strategies. Introduction to mitigation. Mitigation refers to efforts that reduce or eliminate the sources of greenhouse gas emissions or enhance the capacity of carbon sinks such as forests and soils. The goal is to limit the magnitude and rate of long-term climate change. These actions are crucial to preventing the most severe consequences of global warming and maintaining ecological balance. Decarbonizing the energy sector. The energy sector is the largest source of global greenhouse gas emissions. Mitigation strategies here focus on transitioning from fossil fuels to low-carbon and renewable energy sources. Renewable energy, solar, wind, hydroelectric, geothermal, and biomass energy can replace coal, oil, and natural gas. Energy efficiency. Improving the energy efficiency of appliances, buildings, and industrial processes reduces energy demand. Electrification. Switching from fossil fuels to electricity, especially when powered by renewables, for transportation and heating. Grid modernization. Smart grids, energy storage, and demand-side management increase the reliability and efficiency of clean energy systems. Sustainable transportation. Transportation contributes significantly to emissions, particularly from fossil fuel-powered vehicles. Key mitigation strategies include promoting electric vehicles, EVs, and public transportation, developing infrastructure for cycling and walking, investing in rail and low-emission freight systems, using sustainable biofuels and hydrogen, decarbonizing industry. Industrial activities are another major emitter of GHGs, especially in sectors like cement, steel, and chemicals. Strategies include implementing energy efficiency measures, switching to low-carbon fuels, deploying carbon capture, utilization and storage (CCUS), circular economy approaches that reduce waste and enhance resource efficiency, sustainable agriculture and land use. Agriculture contributes through methane and nitrous oxide emissions, while deforestation reduces the planet's carbon sequestration capacity. Mitigation approaches. Reducing deforestation and promoting afforestation and reforestation. Sustainable agricultural practices, such as precision farming and conservation tillage. Methane reduction in livestock and rice cultivation. Soil carbon sequestration through organic farming. Waste management. Improper waste management leads to methane emissions from landfills and inefficient resource use. Mitigation strategies. Reducing, reusing, and recycling waste. Composting organic waste. Capturing landfill gas for energy. Promoting zero waste and circular economy principles. Carbon pricing and policy instruments. Economic tools can incentivize emissions reductions. Carbon taxes charge emitters per ton of carbon dioxide emitted. Cap-and-trade systems set a cap on emissions and allow trading of allowances. Subsidies and incentives support clean technologies and discourage high-emission activities. Regulatory standards enforce efficiency standards for vehicles, buildings, and appliances. International mitigation efforts. Global cooperation is essential for effective mitigation. Paris Agreement. Countries commit to nationally determined contributions, NDCs, to limit global warming. Clean Development Mechanism, CDM, allows developed countries to invest in emission reduction projects in developing countries. Global climate funds support technology transfer, capacity building, and implementation of mitigation measures in developing countries. Role of technology and innovation. Technological innovation accelerates mitigation efforts. Advanced renewable technologies, e.g., floating solar, offshore wind. Smart cities and energy systems. Artificial intelligence for energy optimization. Carbon removal technologies like direct air capture, DAC. Part 3. Climate Change Adaptation Strategies. Introduction to Adaptation. Adaptation involves making adjustments in natural or human systems in response to actual or expected climate impacts. While mitigation aims to prevent future climate change, adaptation focuses on coping with the effects that are already occurring or are inevitable. Successful adaptation reduces vulnerability and enhances resilience, especially among the most exposed populations and ecosystems. Principles of adaptation. Effective adaptation strategies are context-specific, tailored to the geographical, cultural, and socioeconomic context. Inclusive and equitable, engaging vulnerable communities and addressing disparities. Sustainable, integrating with long-term development goals. Flexible, capable of evolving with new knowledge and changing conditions. Sector-wise adaptation strategies. Agriculture and food security. Climate change threatens crop yields, food prices, and nutritional quality. Adaptation options include climate-resilient crops, developing and promoting drought-resistant, flood-tolerant, or heat-tolerant varieties. Improved irrigation, drip systems, water harvesting, and efficient water management. Agroforestry and crop diversification, enhancing soil health and reducing climate risks. Early warning systems, for pests, diseases, and extreme weather events. Water resources. Many regions face increasing water scarcity, floods, and unpredictable rainfall. Strategies. Watershed management and conservation. Rainwater harvesting. Desalination and water recycling. Improved forecasting and water use planning. Human health. Heat waves, disease outbreaks, and pollution are intensified by climate change. Adaptation approaches. Public health infrastructure upgrades. Early disease detection systems. Access to clean water and sanitation. Urban green spaces to mitigate heat stress. Infrastructure and urban planning. Cities are climate hotspots due to dense populations and high emissions. Adaptation includes climate-resilient buildings and infrastructure, improved drainage and flood management, urban greening and heat reduction techniques, disaster-resilient land use planning, coastal zones and marine ecosystems. Sea level rise, erosion, and extreme weather affect coastal communities and ecosystems. Adaptation options. Coastal buffer zones with mangroves, dunes, and wetlands. Climate-resilient fisheries management. Building seawalls and elevating structures. Managed retreat and relocation of vulnerable communities. Ecosystem-based adaptation, EBA. This approach uses biodiversity and ecosystem services to help communities adapt. Examples include restoring wetlands to buffer floods, forest conservation for slope stability, coral reef protection for coastal defense. EBA is cost-effective and co-beneficial, supporting both people and nature. Community-based adaptation, CBA. CBA emphasizes local knowledge and participatory planning to tailor adaptation to the specific needs and capacities of communities. Key aspects: empowering local institutions, indigenous knowledge integration, building adaptive capacity at the grassroots level, national adaptation plans and frameworks. Governments play a vital role in organizing and financing large-scale adaptation. National Adaptation Plans (NAPs), strategic documents to identify priorities and coordinate action. Mainstreaming, integrating climate risks into policies, planning, and budgeting. Climate-resilient development, ensuring infrastructure and investments account for climate impacts. Financing adaptation. Adaptation often requires significant upfront investment, especially in vulnerable regions. Funding sources include Green Climate Fund (GCF), Adaptation Fund, development banks and bilateral aid, private sector engagement and insurance schemes, monitoring, evaluation, and learning. Continuous learning is key to improving adaptation effectiveness. Mechanisms: climate risk assessments, resilience indicators and benchmarks, community feedback and participatory reviews. Part 4: Integrating Mitigation and Adaptation, a Holistic Approach. Introduction. While mitigation and adaptation have traditionally been addressed as separate strategies, an integrated approach offers synergistic benefits. Both are essential to addressing the root causes and consequences of climate change. When planned together, they can maximize impact, optimize resources, and ensure a more resilient and sustainable future. The case for integration. Climate change impacts and responses are interconnected. Mitigation without adaptation may reduce future risks, but fail to protect communities from existing climate threats. Adaptation without mitigation helps communities cope in the short term, but allows climate change to worsen over time. Integrated strategies can enhance cost effectiveness, minimize trade-offs and conflicts, improve long-term sustainability, align with development goals and national priorities. Synergies between mitigation and adaptation. Nature-based solutions. Nature-based solutions simultaneously capture carbon and enhance climate resilience. Examples: mangrove restoration protects coastlines from storms, adaptation, and sequesters carbon, mitigation. Agroforestry improves food security, adaptation, and stores carbon in trees and soils, mitigation. Urban green spaces reduce heat, adaptation, and capture carbon dioxide, mitigation. Sustainable land use. Integrated land use planning can reduce emissions and build adaptive capacity. Climate-smart agriculture practices improve soil health, increase yields, and reduce emissions. Wetland conservation protects biodiversity, manages floods, and serves as carbon sinks. Renewable energy and local resilience. Deploying decentralized renewable energy, like solar microgrids, enhances energy access and reliability during disasters while reducing fossil fuel dependence. Off-grid solar systems mitigate emissions and help rural communities adapt by supporting irrigation, cold storage, and communication. Institutional integration. Coordinated governance enhances the effectiveness of climate action. Strategies include cross-sectoral planning involving energy, agriculture, water, and urban development. Policy coherence between climate policies and national development plans. Shared data and knowledge platforms to support integrated decision-making. Financial integration. Investment strategies that account for both mitigation and adaptation can deliver co-benefits. Approaches. Climate-resilient infrastructure that is both low-carbon and durable. Green bonds that finance projects with dual benefits. Blended finance mechanisms to attract private investment into integrated projects. Community engagement and co-benefits. Local communities often intuitively combine mitigation and adaptation, especially in rural and indigenous settings. Benefits include enhanced livelihoods and income security, improved health outcomes, strengthened social capital and empowerment. Participatory planning ensures solutions are relevant, accepted, and sustainable. Monitoring integrated approaches. Tracking co-benefits and outcomes is essential. Key performance indicators should reflect emissions reduced, mitigation, vulnerability reduced and resilience improved, adaptation. Development benefits like poverty reduction and ecosystem protection. Tools like integrated assessment models, IMES, and climate-resilient development metrics can support this. Challenges and barriers. Despite the benefits, integration is complex. Institutional silos and lack of coordination. Limited technical capacity and financing. Data gaps and uncertainty. Conflicting short and long-term priorities. Overcoming these requires political commitment, capacity building, and inclusive governance structures. Part 5. Climate Policy Governance and International Cooperation. Introduction. Addressing climate change requires coordinated efforts across all levels of governance, from local to global. Effective climate policy provides a framework for action, mobilizes resources, and ensures accountability. International cooperation is especially critical given the transboundary nature of climate impacts and emissions. Global climate governance. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, UNFCCC. Adopted in 1992, The UNFCCC is the foundation of global climate negotiations. It aims to stabilize greenhouse gas concentrations and prevent dangerous human interference with the climate system. The Kyoto Protocol. Adopted in 1997, it established legally binding emission reduction targets for developed countries. While a milestone, its limited scope and withdrawal of key nations highlighted the need for a more inclusive approach. The Paris Agreement, 2015. A landmark in climate diplomacy, the Paris Agreement sets the goal to limit global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees Celsius, ideally 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels. Key features: nationally determined contributions, NDCs, voluntary emission reduction commitments by each country, global stocktake, every 5 years to assess collective progress, support for developing countries, finance, technology transfer, and capacity building, national and subnational policies, national climate action plans. Many countries have adopted national frameworks such as National Adaptation Plans, NAPs, Low Emission Development Strategies, LEDs, Green Growth Strategies. These integrate climate objectives into development planning, agriculture, energy, and transportation. Subnational and local governance. Cities and regions play a critical role due to their proximity to communities and infrastructure. Examples of local initiatives: urban climate resilience plans, local carbon pricing or building codes, community-based adaptation, and disaster risk reduction. Policy instruments for climate action. Regulatory instruments. Emission standards, e.g., fuel efficiency building codes. Renewable energy mandates. Deforestation bans. Market-based mechanisms. Carbon pricing, taxes or cap-and-trade schemes that internalize the cost of emissions. Subsidies, for renewable energy, electric vehicles, or climate-resilient crops. Payments for ecosystem services, PES, incentives for preserving forests or wetlands. Information and voluntary instruments. Eco-labeling and certifications. Climate risk disclosure for businesses. Education and public awareness campaigns. Climate finance and the role of international institutions. Key climate finance mechanisms. Green Climate Fund, GCF. Global Environment Facility, GEF. Adaptation Fund. Climate Investment Fund, CIF. These support mitigation and adaptation projects, especially in vulnerable countries. Role of multilateral development banks, MDBs. MDBs provide financial and technical assistance to governments for climate-smart infrastructure, energy transition and resilience building, technology transfer and capacity building. Developing countries often lack access to the latest climate technologies and know-how. International cooperation helps through sharing best practices, training programs, and institutional strengthening. Joint research and development, R&D. The role of non-state actors. Non-governmental actors are increasingly influential in shaping climate policy. Private sector, driving innovation and investment in green technologies. Civil society, advocacy, community mobilization, and watchdog functions. Academia and think tanks, providing research, models, and policy recommendations. Challenges in climate governance. Despite progress, major challenges remain. Insufficient ambition and enforcement of international commitments. Equity and fairness, especially for low-income and climate-vulnerable nations. Political resistance and misinformation. Fragmentation of efforts across institutions and jurisdictions. The path forward. For climate governance to be effective, global solidarity is essential, especially through support for vulnerable nations. Transparency and accountability must be ensured through robust monitoring and reporting. Policy innovation and experimentation should be encouraged. Inclusive governance must engage all stakeholders, including youth, indigenous peoples, and marginalized communities. Part 6: Technology and Innovation in Climate Action. Introduction. Technology and innovation are pivotal in addressing the climate crisis. They enable society to reduce emissions, enhance resilience, and transition toward sustainable systems. From clean energy to early warning systems, innovative solutions can accelerate both mitigation and adaptation goals. Role of technology in mitigation. Renewable energy technologies. Clean energy generation is at the heart of climate mitigation. Major renewable technologies include solar photovoltaic (PV) converts sunlight into electricity, now widely deployed at various scales. Wind energy, both onshore and offshore systems are rapidly expanding. Hydropower, a mature technology with large-scale and mini-hydro applications. Geothermal and biomass provide baseload power and energy diversification. Energy storage and smart grids. Renewables need supportive infrastructure to manage variability and supply-demand balance. Battery storage systems allow energy to be stored and used during non-generation periods. Smart grids use sensors, AI, and data analytics to optimize electricity distribution and consumption. Carbon capture, utilization, and storage (CCUS). CCUS technologies capture carbon dioxide from industrial processes or the atmosphere, and either store it underground or use it in products like concrete or fuels. Electrification and efficiency. Electric vehicles (EVs) and electric public transport reduce fossil fuel use in transportation. Efficient appliances, LED lighting, and smart buildings reduce energy demand in households and industries. Role of technology in adaptation. Climate information systems. Remote sensing and GIS tools help monitor land use, crop health, and weather patterns. Early warning systems detect extreme weather, floods, and disease outbreaks to enable timely action. Climate-resilient agriculture. Precision farming uses sensors and AI to optimize water, fertilizer, and pesticide use. Biotech and gene editing technologies develop crops tolerant to drought, heat, and pests. Water and infrastructure solutions. Desalination and water recycling ensure sustainable water supplies. Climate-proof infrastructure includes flood barriers, elevated roads, and storm-resistant housing. Innovation in finance and policy. Innovative finance models and policy tools leverage technology to support climate goals. Green digital finance platforms connect investors with climate projects. Blockchain improves transparency and traceability in carbon markets. AI and big data support climate risk modeling and insurance solutions. Digital transformation for climate action. The digital revolution offers unprecedented tools for climate management. Internet of Things (IoT) monitors emissions, energy use, and ecosystem changes in real time. Machine learning predicts climate patterns and guides decision-making. Mobile apps help farmers access weather forecasts, market prices, and planting advice. Innovation ecosystems and startups. Climate tech startups are at the forefront of change, driving innovation in sustainable materials, e.g., biodegradable packaging, alternative cement. Circular economy platforms, e.g., reuse, recycling, and sharing services. Carbon removal, e.g., direct air capture, biochar. Supportive ecosystems, such as incubators, accelerators, and climate innovation hubs, nurture these breakthroughs. Technology transfer and equity. For global impact, advanced technologies must be accessible to developing countries. Key enablers include affordable licensing and open-source models. Public-private partnerships for deployment. Capacity building for local implementation. Barriers to technology deployment. Despite potential, several challenges persist. High upfront costs and financing gaps. Regulatory uncertainty or resistance. Lack of technical skills and infrastructure. Market readiness and consumer acceptance. Overcoming these requires coordinated policy support, innovation incentives, and inclusive stakeholder engagement. The future of climate technology. Emerging frontiers hold promise for transformative change. Artificial intelligence-driven climate models. Next-gen battery technologies. Fusion energy. Carbon-negative materials. Investing in research, development, and deployment of such innovations is critical to achieving climate targets. Part 7. The role of society, education, behavior, and community action. Introduction. Technological solutions and policies are essential in the fight against climate change, but without societal engagement, their impact will be limited. Individuals, communities, and civil society play a pivotal role in shaping a sustainable future. Education, behavioral change, and grassroots action are crucial levers for building resilience and reducing emissions. Climate education. Importance of climate literacy. Climate literacy empowers people with the knowledge and tools to make informed decisions, demand action, and participate meaningfully in climate solutions. A well-informed society is better prepared to adapt and mitigate. Formal education. Integrating climate change into school and university curricula helps. Build awareness from a young age. Develop skills for green jobs. Foster innovation and sustainability thinking. Successful models include climate clubs, environmental science programs, and interdisciplinary sustainability education. Informal and lifelong learning. Workshops, documentaries, podcasts, and social media campaigns expand climate understanding beyond formal education settings. Lifelong learning ensures all age groups stay engaged and updated. Behavioral change. Individual lifestyle choices. Small daily actions, when multiplied, can have significant climate benefits. Reducing meat consumption and food waste. Choosing public transport, cycling, or walking. Conserving energy and water at home. Supporting sustainable brands and local produce. Social norms and cultural shifts. Behavior is heavily influenced by community norms, peer influence, and cultural values. Promoting sustainable lifestyles as aspirational, healthy, and responsible can drive broader change. Tools for behavior change. Nudges. Subtle changes in environments that encourage sustainable choices, e.g., placing vegetarian meals first on menus. Gamification. Using apps or challenges to encourage emission reductions. Feedback and incentives. Real-time energy data, tax credits, or recognition can reinforce positive habits. Community-based climate action. Local initiatives. Communities are often the first to experience climate impacts and are uniquely positioned to respond quickly and creatively. Examples include community gardens and composting programs, local renewable energy cooperatives, neighborhood disaster preparedness groups, watershed and forest conservation initiatives, indigenous knowledge and practices. Indigenous communities possess deep knowledge of local ecosystems and sustainable resource management. Integrating this wisdom into climate strategies promotes resilience and cultural preservation. Empowering marginalized groups. Women, youth, and vulnerable populations are both disproportionately affected by climate change and essential to solving it. Empowering these groups enhances equity, participation, and effectiveness of climate action. Civil society and advocacy. NGOs and community organizations. Nonprofits and grassroots organizations are key drivers of awareness, education, and service delivery. They often serve as bridges between governments and citizens. Climate movements and campaigns. Movements like Fridays for Future, Extinction Rebellion, and 350.org have mobilized millions and kept climate high on the political agenda. These campaigns use marches, digital activism, and storytelling to shift narratives and demand accountability. Faith-based and cultural leaders. Religious institutions and cultural influencers can powerfully shape public opinion, encourage moral responsibility, and inspire collective action. Building a climate-conscious society. A society committed to climate action. Prioritizes education at all levels. Encourages sustainable norms and behaviors. Empowers communities with resources and autonomy. Engages in participatory governance and activism. Challenges and opportunities. While social engagement is rising, barriers remain. Climate fatigue and misinformation. Inequity in access to education and platforms. Limited incentives for sustainable behavior. However, digital tools, inclusive policies, and growing youth leadership present immense opportunities to scale social action. Part 8. Measuring Progress, Metrics, Reporting, and Transparency. Introduction. Effective climate action depends not only on commitments and implementation, but also on tracking and evaluating progress. Robust metrics, transparent reporting, and accountability mechanisms are vital to ensure that efforts in mitigation and adaptation are delivering results, and to build public and international trust. The importance of measurement and transparency. Measuring progress allows evaluation of effectiveness of climate strategies, identification of gaps and course corrections, attraction of finance and investment by demonstrating impact, fulfillment of international commitments and credibility, engagement of stakeholders through transparent communication. Key metrics for climate change mitigation. Greenhouse gas emissions. Total GHG emissions by sector: energy, transport, industry, agriculture. Emissions intensity: emissions per unit of GDP or per capita. Carbon sequestration through land use changes or CCS. Carbon footprint at national, corporate, or product levels. Energy and technology indicators. Share of renewable energy in the energy mix. Energy efficiency improvements, e.g., energy use per unit of output. Deployment of clean technologies, e.g., electric vehicles, green buildings. Key metrics for adaptation. Adaptation is more complex to measure than mitigation because it often involves qualitative outcomes. Resilience and preparedness indicators. Reduction in climate-related losses, lives, assets, GDP. Access to early warning systems. Improved water and food security. Strengthened infrastructure resilience. Socioeconomic and institutional indicators. Vulnerability assessments, e.g., livelihoods, health, exposure. Climate risk integration in planning and budgeting. Community participation in adaptation planning. Adaptive capacity of institutions and governance. Reporting frameworks and tools. Nationally determined contributions, NDCs. Under the Paris Agreement, countries report their climate targets and progress through NDCs. These are updated every 5 years to reflect increasing ambition. National communications and biennial reports. Submitted to the UNFCCC, these include data on GHG inventories, mitigation actions, and adaptation efforts. Climate disclosure standards. Task Force on Climate-Related Financial Disclosures, TCFD, encourages companies to disclose climate-related financial risks. Carbon Disclosure Project (CDP), platform for corporate environmental reporting. Voluntary carbon markets and certifications. Mechanisms like Verified Carbon Standard, VCS, and Gold Standard provide accountability for carbon offset projects. Tools and technologies for monitoring. Remote sensing and satellite imagery tracks deforestation, glacier retreat, land use change. Earth observation platforms, like NASA's Earth Data or ESA's Copernicus. Digital dashboards and climate portals allow real-time tracking of emissions and climate trends. Blockchain for tamper-proof data tracking in carbon markets. Transparency and accountability mechanisms. Global Stocktake (GST). A core feature of the Paris Agreement, the GST occurs every 5 years to assess collective progress toward long-term climate goals and inform future NDCs. Independent reviews and audits. Third-party assessments of national or corporate climate actions improve credibility and reduce greenwashing. Civil society and media oversight. NGOs, academic institutions, and the media play watchdog roles, analyzing reports and demanding accountability. Challenges in measurement and reporting. Data gaps and inconsistencies, especially in developing countries. Complexity of adaptation metrics. Resource and technical limitations. Risks of manipulation or misreporting. Strengthening transparency systems. To improve climate accountability. Capacity building in measurement and reporting institutions. International support for technical assistance and training. Harmonization of metrics to enable comparability. Open data policies to encourage public and scientific engagement. Part 9: Challenges, Opportunities, and the Road Ahead. Introduction. The global response to climate change stands at a pivotal moment. While unprecedented progress has been made in understanding the problem and deploying solutions, numerous challenges persist. At the same time, climate action presents a transformative opportunity to create a more just, resilient, and sustainable world. This part examines key obstacles, emerging opportunities, and strategic priorities for the future. Persistent challenges. Insufficient ambition. Despite global agreements like the Paris Agreement, current national pledges are not aligned with the 1.5 degrees Celsius pathway. Many countries lack binding policies, and progress often falls short of commitments. Financing gaps. Developing countries require substantial financial resources for mitigation and adaptation. While climate finance is increasing, it remains below the $100 billion annual commitment made by developed nations. Political and institutional barriers. Climate change often suffers from low prioritization in political agendas. Institutional fragmentation and lack of coordination hinder effective implementation. Short-term political cycles undermine long-term planning. Inequality and injustice. Vulnerable communities, often the least responsible for emissions, face the greatest risks. Climate impacts exacerbate existing inequalities in income, gender, health, and access to resources. Just transitions for workers in carbon-intensive industries are still lacking. Technological and capacity constraints. Many regions lack access to critical technologies and the skills needed to deploy them. Innovation diffusion is uneven and often slow in reaching rural or marginalized populations. Emerging opportunities. Economic transformation. Green growth can create millions of jobs in renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, and ecotourism. Circular economy models reduce waste and promote resource efficiency. Climate action fosters innovation ecosystems and new business models. Co-benefits for health and well-being. Reduced air pollution leads to improved respiratory health. Active transport systems like cycling promote physical fitness. Nature-based solutions offer both carbon sinks and psychological benefits. Youth and grassroots movements. The rise of youth-led climate movements and grassroots organizations is transforming public discourse, increasing pressure on policymakers, and inspiring cross-generational solidarity. Digital and data revolution. Smart technologies, AI and IoT, allow precise tracking and management of emissions and resources. Mobile platforms enhance climate education and access to finance for smallholders and entrepreneurs. Strategic priorities for the future. Raising global ambition. Countries must submit enhanced NDCs with deeper emission cuts. Climate goals should be legally binding and accompanied by clear implementation strategies. Accelerating just transitions. Support workers in fossil fuel sectors with reskilling and social protection. Ensure no one is left behind by prioritizing equity in all climate policies. Scaling finance and investment. Mobilize public and private finance toward low-carbon resilient infrastructure. Innovate financial instruments such as green bonds, climate insurance and blended finance. Strengthening local and indigenous leadership. Devolve resources and decision-making to local governments. Recognize and support indigenous knowledge systems and community stewardship. Enhancing international cooperation. Foster collaboration in technology development, data sharing, and climate diplomacy. Rebuild trust between developed and developing countries through transparent support and solidarity. Vision for a climate-resilient future. A world that meets the climate challenge successfully will be low carbon, powered by clean and efficient energy. Resilient, with infrastructure and systems adapted to a changing climate. Inclusive, ensuring that everyone has a voice and shares in the benefits of transition. Restorative, where ecosystems are protected, restored, and valued. Conclusion. Climate change is one of the greatest tests humanity has ever faced. It is complex, interconnected, and urgent, but also an unparalleled opportunity to redefine progress, protect the planet, and promote dignity for all. The path forward demands courage, cooperation, and commitment at every level, from individuals to institutions, and from cities to nations. The time to act is now.